Have you ever wondered why some people claim that the carnivore diet just doesn't seem to work for them? Well, there are 5 main reasons for this. And in today's video, I'm going to break down these 5 mistakes that I see people make time and time again, so you can avoid them and not only feel incredible, but also look incredible on the carnivore diet. I have a theory, which I'm sure you'll agree with. If you do carnivore for long enough, it is impossible not to have your 20-year-old body back and to feel incredible. I'll put on screen a picture of the world's fattest man from the year 1880. He was so fat that he was in a circus, labelled as a freak show. Whereas nowadays, if that man walked past you, nobody would bat an eye. It's completely normal. Same with all of these chronic illnesses. The first heart attack ever recorded in the United States wasn't until the year 1912. In the year 1900, heart disease as we know it did not exist. 1 in 17 people got cancer. Now 41% of people have cancer. 1 in 3 people will have some sort of cardiovascular issue. And the rates of obesity, well, we can all clearly see that they are through the roof. As humans have begun to consume more and more plants and more processed food, it has had a terrible effect on us. But when a species eats what it's designed to eat, it has no illness. They're never fat. This is why when we see wild animals, they're all healthy and fit. So let's get into these 5 mistakes. Everyone has been told their entire lives that you need to limit portion sizes. Now, in theory, this sounds good. If you eat less, the weight will come down. But in practice, what happens? We've all experienced it. When you limit the portion sizes, you get ridiculously hungry, which means you can't stop thinking about food all day, which leads to binging. And all the food that you didn't eat because you were having smaller portions, you end up eating it all in one massive meal anyway. Now, on a traditional diet, it is essential that you do limit your portion sizes. Our hunger signaling is all out of whack. First of all, plants contain carbohydrates, which cause these blood sugar fluctuations. And when we have these blood sugar fluctuations, it seriously messes with our hunger signaling. For one, it literally blocks the hormone called leptin, which says to our brain, hey, we're full, we no longer need to eat. And then don't even get me started on the ultra-processed foods. They have teams of scientists for this, whose job is to make these things addictive. And not only addictive, but to make them so you're never satisfied. They quite literally will use ingredients that leave no aftertaste, so you want more. And they intentionally make them so they're not filling at all. So you have to consume an extreme amount even to feel slightly full. But on carnivore, or the proper human diet as it should be called, all your hunger signaling regulates. People often find that they just stop getting hungry. Me personally, I spent my entire life being constantly hungry, constantly thinking about food. But when I switched to carnivore, within weeks, I never got hungry. And because of this, when it comes to mealtime, you can eat how much you want to eat. A carnivore diet is incredibly satiating, meaning you feel very full after eating. So you naturally end up consuming a lot less food. But the mistake that people make is because they've been told their entire lives to limit portion sizes, is that they continue to do it. And again, this just leaves you hungry. You think about food, you're more likely to binge, and you're more likely to slip off. The people who are most likely not to stay on carnivore are the ones who do not allow themselves to eat till they're full. I know it goes against everything you've been told your entire life, but do not limit your portion sizes, especially when you're starting out and your body's trying to heal. Assuming you're not overeating a select few carnivore foods, which I'll get into shortly, it is virtually impossible over a long enough time to not get in great shape, even if you're eating till you're completely full, because it is the proper human diet. And like I said, when a species eats, its proper diet does not get fat and it does not get sick. Now, this next mistake I see people making is going to annoy a lot of people, but I'm just keeping it real because I see this happen very frequently. Let's say you met a vegan and they said to you, I've been vegan for 10 years, but I don't have any of these symptoms that people tell me I will have after being on a vegan diet for a long time. My energy's fine, I don't feel too bad, everything's good. So you say to them, you've been on a vegan diet for 10 years, you haven't eaten any meat or any animal products for 10 whole years. And so they sort of take a step back a little bit. Well, I guess when we go out on a Friday night, we do from time to time get a kebab. You know, they taste so good after you've been drinking. And boss man who owns the place, he's such a lovely guy. Oh, and sometimes my boss at work, there's this really nice cafe around the corner and he gets us these sausage rolls. Oh, they're so good. But like other than that, the vast majority of the time, completely vegan. Now, if that happens, you kind of look at them and go, yeah, I don't know if you're vegan. Maybe that's why you haven't experienced all these negative symptoms. And the same applies with carnivore. A lot of people call themselves carnivore because they eat a very meat-heavy diet. But there are so many little things that you can consume that can seriously mess with your results. One thing I see time and time again is artificial sweeteners. Now, a lot of people think, well, there's no calories in these things, so they won't cause me to gain weight. However, artificial sweeteners can make you hungrier. They can make you crave things. When you consume artificial sweeteners, what happens is your body gets that sweet taste. Now, when it gets this sweet taste, it expects energy, so your blood sugar actually elevates. And like I talked about earlier, when that blood sugar elevates, it blocks the hunger signaling. Now, not only will adding things in make you hungrier, but they can mess with your energy levels. On a carnivore diet, it is either a zero or a low carbohydrate diet, depending if you're consuming things like dairy. And so if your diet is mainly meat, but I don't know, 3-4 days a week, you have a sandwich with your meat, or you have some pasta or rice for dinner. Now you're sort of in this place where you're not in ketosis, so you're not going to feel your best, but you're not consuming enough carbohydrates for your body to effectively run on carbohydrates without having to change fuel sources all the time. This right here is going to cause massive energy fluctuations. Plus those carbohydrates, again, blood sugar spikes. And often what happens when you consume too many carbohydrates at once is not only do you get the spike, but you get the crash. But it doesn't stop where it was beforehand. It goes below that baseline. And in this state, your body literally thinks, we're dying. It thinks it's run out of fat. And again, you get ridiculously hungry. Your energy's terrible. It's just a complete nightmare. Now, carnivore, it's not a religion. So if you want to consume other things, by all means do that. But it is important to note that there are many things that affect different people in different ways. So if you're not 100% strict on the carnivore diet, you can't say it's not working for you, because maybe you're one of these people that's hypersensitive to whatever else you're eating. The next mistake is actually one I made myself. When I first started the carnivore diet, I had just finished a bulk. Now, the purpose of a bulk is to eat lots of food and put on large amounts of muscle mass. But in reality, it's just an excuse to eat as much food as you want, and I ended up getting really fat, which, wouldn't recommend, wasn't good for the love life. But my point being is that I had a lot of weight to lose. So what I'd do is I'd go to the supermarket and I'd get eggs and steak. That's essentially what I ate every single meal. But I wasn't getting the super fatty steaks. Now, for a long time, this did not matter. I felt amazing. The weight was coming down. Even though I wasn't consuming that much fat, I still felt good. Everyone talks about the importance of having high fat for energy levels, but I didn't experience this. That was until I started getting lean. So what happened is that at a certain point, I just did not feel good. It's hard to explain, but your head sort of feels like it's compressing if you're not eating enough fat. My energy just wasn't quite there. But as soon as I upped the fat, I felt amazing. So if you are someone who's starting out and you're overweight, you may not experience this too much. But as you get leaner, you do need to include a lot of fat in your diet. Fat is essential for building our hormones. And on carnivore, it's our primary fuel source. If you're not consuming enough fat, you're just not going to do your best. And I see time and time again, when people aren't feeling their best, they're not eating enough fat. Now, these low energy symptoms can also be made worse by not consuming enough salt. Like I talked about earlier, the carnivore diet is a low to zero carbohydrate diet. Now, carbohydrates cause these massive blood sugar spikes. And in order to bring our blood sugar back down, another hormone known as insulin elevates. Now, when we eat fats or proteins, we don't get these big blood sugar spikes, and therefore we have a lot less insulin. Now, this is a good thing, but another function of insulin is that it helps our kidneys to retain electrolytes. So you've had this drastic diet switch, you have a lot less insulin, and therefore the salt you're consuming isn't being retained as effectively. Now, and when you combine this with the fact that you're no longer eating these ultra-processed foods, which have lots of salt in them also, what can happen is that people can experience a sodium deficiency. And when you have a lack of sodium, you can become dehydrated, which again leads to energy issues. You can get cramps, you can have brain fog. In order to ensure this doesn't happen, when you first start the carnivore diet, you need to put a lot more salt on your meat than you typically would. Salt to taste. If it tastes good, that's your body's way of saying, we want this. What happens is that over time, you start to enjoy the taste of the saltiness less and less. And so you naturally end up putting a lot less on. Even if you are consuming excess salt, with healthy kidneys, you just urinate it out anyway. So the third mistake is that you're not consuming enough fat and not consuming enough salt. And technically speaking, are these two different reasons? Maybe. But what sounds better? 5 reasons you're not successful in the carnivore diet, or 6 reasons you're not successful in the carnivore diet? I think 5 has just a nicer ring to it. So for that reason, they're getting coupled as one. Now, the next mistake, and this one is a super easy one to make because eating is incredibly pleasurable. We've been positively rewarded for it to a monumental degree throughout all of our history. For a long time, the primary objective of the day was to find something to eat. And it's not like our minds have advanced that much in that time frame. Our bodies don't know there's a supermarket up the road, as well as the fact that many people have been rewarded their entire lives with food. It's a Saturday night, we'll go out, let's get a treat. Even as adults, people continue to celebrate with food. Oh, it's Jenny's birthday. She only turns 33 once, and you'll all go out, have a big, unhealthy meal. At the start, I said on Carnivore, eat till you're completely full. Eat as your appetite dictates. But the one caveat with that is that you cannot just eat all day because you're completely bored. If you ever get a bit hungry or it's time to eat a big meal till you're full. But if you're just someone who sits there all day using food as their main cure for boredom, as their main source of pleasure, it will seriously hinder your weight loss. Now, the final mistake I see so many people make relates to how you're using dairy. Dairy is designed by a cow for its infant so that it can grow as large as possible. But here's the thing, we've stopped growing up so we can only grow wide. It actually tricks us through a number of different methods into over-consuming it. First of all, it doesn't fill us up at all. Think about it. Have you ever eaten so much cheese and gone, you know what? I actually don't need dinner tonight. This cheese board, it was delicious. I don't need to eat anything else. Then it also has a compound in it called beta-casomorphin, which literally acts as an opioid-like substance to make us addicted. And so what we have with dairy is something that makes us hungry, but it doesn't fill us up, and it's super high in energy. And at the end of the day, body fat is excess energy that is stored. Now, I'm not saying you have to completely avoid dairy if you want to lose weight. However, what I will say is that you use it like a condiment. Put a little bit of cheese on top of your meat if you like. Use it like you would a sauce. You'd have your piece of meat, a little bit of sauce on the side. Maybe you dip the meat in the sauce. Dairy can also make people anxious, in particular pasteurized dairy. Some people can have raw dairy but not pasteurized dairy, whereas some people need to avoid dairy completely. Now, the pasteurization process for dairy is where they heat it to high temperatures to kill the bad bacteria so it can last in the supermarkets for a long period of time. But what happens is as these proteins are heated, they become denatured and they become inflammatory. Now, this can make people anxious because when you have inflammation in your gut, it seriously impairs your ability to make many of the hormones that make you happy. For example, serotonin, the hormone that's responsible for just a calm, happy sensation. 90% of it is made in the gut. In fact, if you are depressed and you go see a psychologist, the drug they put you on is called an SSRI, which stands for a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which essentially means it tries to give your body more serotonin. Well, if all of it's made in the gut and you have an inflamed gut which is less effective at making it, you can only imagine what's going to happen. So, if you are someone who's anxious, it might be something to think about. As a whole though, when it comes to dairy, you don't have to completely avoid it, just be careful about the amount you're consuming. The other day I asked Dr. Ken Berry this exact question. Why do you think people struggle on the carnivore diet? And if you click this video here, you'll see exactly what he has to say. Subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time.